Hello and welcome to Kirtan London Journey to Joy, episode number 25. Episode number 25. I'm very, very excited to be back. We have been away for a minute. We missed an episode. It's been a month and a bit since we were last together, but I'm very excited because today we're starting chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita. And I'm once again joined by my very, very good friend and very wonderful person who was with us for chapter 8, who's going to be joining us for chapter 9 as well, none other than Acyuta Gopi. Thank you so much, Acyuta, for joining us again. Nice to see you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to be here. I feel like, refreshed. New season. We got new season happening. It's good.
Right. That's right. That's what it is. This is the Bhagavad Gita podcast with 18 seasons.
That's right.
Amazing. We are discussing chapter 9. We wrapped up chapter 8 in our last episode. Fantastic episode. A lot of really great stuff came out of that. And today we're starting chapter 9. So I'll just actually, before we dive in, see how it's been a minute? I forget how we start these episodes. We always start our podcasts with an invocation mantra. What is that? It's a prayer that we chant to our teachers. We're asking for their blessings and we're offering them our gratitude. We do it before any spiritual activity. So let's do it today. And it's become tradition that Acyuta will chant those prayers for us. So I'll pass it over to you, Acyuta, to take us away.
Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Welcome back, Acyuta. Thank you for joining us again.
Always a pleasure.
I'm excited. I'm excited because you said chapter 9 was your favorite chapter.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorites. And just, the title itself, the most confidential knowledge. I kind of love two things about this most confidential knowledge. One, that it's kind of like hidden smack dab in the middle of the book. Like you gotta get through some stuff. And two, that it's not the end of the book. Like one might think you get the most confidential knowledge and then isn't that the end of the book? No. It's almost like this is just the tip of the iceberg of confidential knowledge. And I feel like Krishna's kind of been hinting around at certain things, like talking around certain subjects, answering questions, but it's like making Arjuna kind of like work for it. Like, no, what do you really want to know? Clarifying his questions more and more and more. And now we get to this confidential knowledge. And why is it confidential? And they were saying that Krishna often, he doesn't like bluntly speak about these kind of things to just anyone and everyone because they're the means to literally attaining him. This is like the means to attaining the supreme person. And if anybody's ever been in a relationship, we know that when it gets to becoming like really vulnerable and open, it takes us a while. It's like Krishna's now at this point now. He's starting to really get in depth with who he is. We've seen Arjuna's trauma and we've seen his moments of vulnerability. But now Krishna gets to show these moments of vulnerability. So I like to kind of look at these chapters and look at how our Supreme Person is being vulnerable, being open, maybe in even some cases saying, I love you, I'm here for you, even if it's not particularly in those words. So I've kind of been on a bit of a a search for looking for all of those ways that like divine love shows up in our lives where we've kind of whoop, or passed over it. It's gone right over our heads. We haven't even realized it. But I'm like, but that's God saying that God loves you. So I think it'll be really fun to go through this chapter looking at that.
You answered my first question already, which was why is this chapter one of your favorite chapters? But I feel like you just answered that there. It was such a nice overview, a nice description. It's funny, I was reading a really nice Gita summary by a very, very wonderful soul called Sutapa Prabhu, who has written this summary of the Bhagavad Gita. He's broken down each chapter into one-page summaries, and then within each chapter he's broken the chapter down into 3, 4, 5 sections, and then give it a brief description of what each of those sections is. It's great. It's a great summary, and he talks about this idea of it being right in the middle. I really liked the analogy he used. It's like a pearl in the middle of a shell. You get the beautiful, expensive, priceless item right there, bang smack in the middle.
And you know, for a person like myself, I love like luxurious things. So when you start talking about like jewelry and I'm like, yes, exactly. You get it.
I like it. I like a bit of jewelry too. I had my ears pierced when I was 13.
I mean, you know, and with you, Mudva, it's not like overstated. You have to kind of like look close to find it. But
I'm not
like,
wearing it right now,
like
so maybe that's
your
why.
piercings, no, but like you know, if anybody's seen Mudva, he's got like a little nose stud. Like they're like things, but it's like almost barely visible sometimes, and then you'll hit the light the right way, and it's just like ping, and I'm like, oh, I love it. I'm so here for it.
I love it. Thank you, Acyuta. I appreciate it. I do love myself a bit of bling as well. I'm in touch with my feminine side. That's how I feel.
Is it actually a feminine side? I mean, well, uh, Venus
That's
is
a
the
good point.
planet. Like, I mean, I guess, you know, Venus is the planet that rules over like beauty and luxury and all those things. But Venus,
See,
according
men have a feminine side too. That's the thing.
they do, and Venus, according to Vedic astrology, is ruled by a sage dude. Like
Really?
it's ruled by
A
Shukracharya.
stage dude.
Yeah, it's ruled by Shukracharya.
No way, really?
Hmm.
Isn't he the spiritual master of the demons?
Yes.
Ah,
Uh-huh.
interesting. Very
Right?
interesting.
Isn't that something? He rules over the planet of Venus. And so if it's debilitated in your chart, usually you have to like pray and do some little, you know, assuaging. But also it's heavily involved with the female energy and Shakti and all of this wonderful like feminine, but also ruled by guys. So Krishna had his nose pierced.
If you and all of these powerful kshatriya is the Vedic or the Sanskrit word for warrior, but not just a warrior, not just a soldier or fighter, but an epic ancient Indian archer, mace fighter, sword fighter, spear fighter. These were warriors that you've never seen before, and these guys were garbed up. They'd have gold and jewels and silks and all kinds of things. There's one really, I know we digress, but this is cool. There's one cool, incredible pastime that plays out in the story of the Mahabharata, within which this Bhagavad Gita sits, where the Pandavas, the 5 Pandavas, are in exile, and it's coming to the end of their exile, and Arjuna, the middle brother, who we're talking about in the Gita, world famous archer, has to come out and fight by himself with the Kauravas. They attack this kingdom because they hear that the Pandavas are hiding there. Arjuna comes out, and there's context to this. Okay, I'm going to try and explain it without confusing anyone.
I'm waiting for it. I'm like, how are you going to fit this?
Yeah. So he's in disguise. Yeah. Arjuna has been, because the Pandavas have been in disguise for their last year. That was part of the agreement, that they had to go into disguise. And if they got caught, they'd be sent back to the forest for another 13 years. So Arjuna's year, strangely enough, he takes on the disguise of a eunuch and a dance teacher in the palace of the king of Virat. And so he's not come out technically to fight. He's come out as the charioteer of the king's son to defend the army. And the ladies of the house, when his name in during this year was Brihanala, they say, Brihanala, when you and the king's son Bhuminjai, I believe his name was, when you defeat the Kauravas, bring back all their silks. He says, bring back all their silken garments, because the ladies of the palace knew that all the Kshatriyas were wearing beautiful silk robes. They say, bring them back for us.
Yeah, I love that part. Also, the other description, when he first walks into this kingdom in this disguise, the way he's described, everybody, like, he's so handsome, but everybody's turning heads, men, women, because nobody can figure out, like, they're like, what's happening? Like, who is he, and who is he attracted to, and who is he attractive to? But it's everybody. And so everybody's just kind of like turning heads, and he's this tall figure. He's got these broad shoulders, but now they're also in a bit of like a sari, and he's got like this dance attire on. There's armlets and anklets and all kinds of things, and his hair is all done up. And he would
So
grow
confusing.
his hair out really long for that year, so he'd grow it out and make it in all these intricate styles. Like, it just goes to show how masculinity and femininity as we know it today was like nothing compared to how epic it was.
There's a lot of things that we've lost, I would say. There's a lot of nuances to the human experience that have been lost. Bringing it back, baby.
That's
busting
right.
out those silken saris.
Okay.
Next episode, you gonna see it. No. I don't think I can pull it off quite like Arjuna did.
Right.
Sadly.
And what I love about it is the fact that Bhagavad Gita doesn't happen in a vacuum. It is not just here's a packet of philosophy and that's it. It's in the midst of this greater epic poem, this epic history. And I feel like it is so important for us to know the history.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like you said, even with Bhagavad Gita, we have no context for it if we haven't delved into who is Arjuna, what has he been facing throughout his life, so why does this mean so much?
Yeah, absolutely. Good time for a plug. You should go read the Mahabharat. It's a fantastic book. There's an excellent translation of the book out by a dude called Krishna Dharma.
Okay, yes.
Just throwing that out there. I don't know who he is, random guy, but he's got an incredible...
He's also done a fantastic Ramayana translation that I was just reading for 9 days over preparing for Ram Navami. I spent like 9 days reading and listening to the audiobook on Audible. That'll tell you how good it is. I'm not even an Audible person, but that book, I spent 9 days with it over Audible. So good.
Oh my God. I love it, Acyuta. I love it. He's my dad, by the way. Just throwing that out there. And I was lying about this random guy, but his book is fantastic. Both books, Mahabharat, Ramayana, fantastic books. Me and Acyuta have connected over these books for many years now. We both have a similar love and passion for them. Fantastic books, very, very easy reads, should be movies, both of them. Go check them out. And they give context to the Gita. Like Acyuta was saying, you really understand what might feel like a difficult thing to understand. Why is Krishna... Sometimes people ask that question, why is Krishna telling Arjuna to fight?
Yeah, he's advocating a slaughter of millions of people.
Yeah, which seems like a sensible question if you don't understand what's happening, what's happened, who Arjuna is, who's he facing on the battlefield, and what's gone down between them.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's really amazing social commentary with Krishna speaking about aggressors that are fit to be killed, people who act a certain way and what the reaction is for that, and how, in essence, Krishna is saying this reaction is already coming. These actions have brought about reactions. You can be an instrument and help me in this and make it happen, but these reactions are already coming. He's like, I've already decided.
Right.
And I happen to be God. Like, he keeps putting in, and I happen to be God.
I love it. I love it. Beautiful. I love it. So, Acyuta, would you do us the honors of diving into chapter 9 and seeing where we go with this.
Sure. Of course, we can just start with text 1.
Yes.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence."
You have a great tone of voice, by the way.
Thank you. I should do audiobooks. I want
You
to.
did. I've said this to you in the past. I'm also at work. I train and coach communication. I'm listening to you speak and I'm thinking, what a fantastic tone of voice Acyuta has. We train this. We try to teach people to speak the way you just spoke. Beautiful.
I took voice and speech lessons in high school because I went
Oh,
to
that shows.
school.
That shows. It shows. And it makes sense because it's such a beautiful flow. It's dramatic, but not over the top. It's very nice.
So this verse, I like, it's like Krishna leans in. He's like, "I'm going to tell you a secret, okay? It'll make you feel a lot better about this whole situation. And I'm going to tell you because we've been lifelong friends. Because you are never envious of me." Um, and that word, non-envious, goes hand in hand with non-violence. Like we hear about ahimsa all the time. And one of our wonderful spiritual teachers, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he was saying one of the key points of non-violence is non-enviousness. Because there's an enviousness that can lead to so many subtle forms of violence that we don't even think of. And I always thought about that. And I was like, wow, he was saying true ahimsa really means to be non-envious. Because if you think you're just not being violent, you're not physically striking out at somebody, and that's non-violence, he's like, there's so many more subtle forms that are so insidious and they get in there. And so he was saying that real ahimsa, especially as we are spiritualists and a lot of us tend to go on this, strike of ahimsa, but usually when it comes to what we're eating, when we think
Mm,
about ahimsa, it also goes with people, also goes
mm,
in our interactions. And it's so important that we look at this value of non-enviousness.
mm.
Arjuna was so just open. Krishna was his best friend, and that was it. There's a little anecdote in a book called Nectar of Devotion.
Yeah.
And they talk about what friendship is and the different levels of friendship. And there's a level of friendship with divinity where you understand that your friend is divine and you don't care. And they use Arjuna as an example of this. He'd understand in some sections that Krishna was divine and he wouldn't care. So they use one story. They said once there were all kinds of celestial demigods that came to visit Krishna and they were offering prayers. And they say that Arjuna happened to be with him. And Arjuna goes and he looks and he stands in front of Krishna. And then what he does is he fluffs his peacock feather and he like clears some dust from it. And then he stands back and then he's like, "Okay, no problem. Continue." And that's the kind of friend that Arjuna was. He's like, "Oh, you got some. Let me just, okay, you're good. No problem."
Oh, that's beautiful. That's
Isn't
beautiful.
it? And it's such a beautiful example. Like, this is my friend. They're divine. I don't care. And this also shows his non enviousness. If there were all these celestials there, Arjuna's not thinking, why aren't they talking to me? Why are they talking to him? Instead, he's like, oh, wait, my friend's got dust. Let me take care of it for him. Let me make sure he looks pristine.
Mm. It's beautiful when you have that relationship with someone, isn't it? You've got any of those close friends or relatives who you really feel that toward. No matter what success they find, you're only their well-wisher. You only love them. Such a beautiful relationship, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's like divine relationships right there, And I was just
Mm,
talking about it this morning with another podcast for the Bhakti Center, and we were saying that devotional service does not just mean service to God, but devotional service can and should always mean service to each other.
right.
These relationships that we have with each other can also be really divine,
Mm,
especially if we're acknowledging that everyone has a Paramatma, everyone has a Krishna in their heart. So, Madhva, the way I speak to you, my service to you, my all these things can be a reflection of how I'm serving my supreme person, because he's there looking from within your heart right there.
Mm, that's beautiful. This to me is practical spirituality. It's not some airy fairy thing that causes us to disconnect from our experience, our human experience, and therefore sometimes cause harm in our human experience, which sometimes it feels as though spiritualists can fall into that trap of of becoming so absorbed in the spiritual that they forget about their human experience and those around them. Seems to me like a trap that can catch people. But this beautifully explains how not to fall into that trap, how you can feel as though you're really dedicating and pursuing spiritual growth and knowledge whilst doing it in a healthy way, maintaining loving relationships, maintaining caring relationships with those around you.
And I think that just the second paragraph of the purport is really sweet.
Yeah.
The devotees are constantly engaged in the Supreme Lord's service. The Lord understands the mentality and sincerity of a particular living entity who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and gives him the intelligence to understand the science of Krishna in the association of devotees. Discussion of Krishna is very potent, and if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate the knowledge, then he will surely make advancement towards spiritual realization. So this association and these first three verses, 1, 2, and 3, Srila Prabhupada makes very strong points about how important good association is for our entire spiritual lives.
Mm. I feel like, can I be honest?
Yeah,
Can I be candid?
please.
It's really tough because I feel like I'm going, like my spiritual life goes through waves. Sometimes I feel very connected, or I feel like I'm riding high on a wave, and sometimes I feel less connected and I'm low and I'm not doing the practices that I want, and sometimes I am and sometimes I'm. It's like waves, and my hope is that they're gradually with the dips and peaks and troughs, they're still going upwards. That's my hope, but sometimes it doesn't feel like that. And right now I have been going through a little period of time that I've been feeling what I would almost call, without trying to concern anyone, it's nothing to be concerned about in that sense, but I would almost call it a crisis of faith, where I'm feeling like, oh, I'm really disconnected. And in terms of my faith in particular, I'm struggling. And we talk about bad association. I am so addicted to my phone. And I've heard this before, that I watch way too much YouTube. Now, what is association? It's spending time. We typically think of association as spending time with someone. But these devices have now given us unlimited access to essentially the same thing, but digital form. And I was in another group, in part of a men's sadhana group, which I haven't been to in a long time, but I still watch the videos because they're recorded. And they were discussing there how we forget that this is also association. And I watch way too much, and I feel as I'm connecting more with that than I do with Krishna. And I feel it. I feel that. And then when I hear something like this, it drives it home for me that why am I feeling a low? Why am I feeling that lack of faith? It's because I'm doing the wrong things.
Yeah, well, I mean, text 3 in that purport, Srila Prabhupada is going to really dig in then. If you've been like, why am I feeling this lack of faith? Srila Prabhupada is about to like find your little wounds and stick his finger right in it. Like, here you go. And you're like,
I,
it feels a little bit stingy at first, but yeah, like you said, I'm constantly, and before I was asking myself, like, what am I associating with? Who am I associating with? Even through television, computer, who is it that I've just allowed into my space? And what are we speaking about? And so rather than just putting a blanket statement, phone bad, I've been trying to take, and Srila Prabhupada makes a really nice analogy. It's like scalpels. It's like a scalpel is a knife, but in the hands of a surgeon, it's a scalpel, and you give
Mm.
it the utmost respect. In the hands of a bank robber, it's an armed weapon, and that has a different connotation. But you don't just say knives bad and then do away with all of them. We see that sometimes they have function. So instead of saying, phone bad, I'm trying to really look at, wait, who who did I just let into my space? What am I letting into my space? Because I guarantee you, with my mind, if it wasn't the phone, it'd be something else.
This is very sensible thinking. Very, very sensible. I completely agree with you. It just so happens in my case, I'm that bank robber, with the knife all over the place and cutting myself up. So that's why it's, yeah. I'm
Yeah, so
excited to dive into to that when we get to that third one, because I do
we're gonna
feel
get
like I really need, I do need a little reminder. I need a little push in that direction.
so yeah, we'll
We'll
definitely
get there. We'll get
we'll
there.
charge we're gonna charge right ahead. And for me, kind of what I started doing, even if I found myself in like an isolated space, where you might have a work schedule that kind of isolates you from official temple programs, etc. Um, I kind of started forcing myself to post more spiritual content. It forces me not to be lazy. It keeps me on my toes. It makes me think about Krishna, even if I'm going to be engaged on social media or scrolling or whatever. If I'm forcing myself to post more spiritual content, it flips it for me and turns me from the bank robber to a surgeon. Because, like I said, I have to flip it because my mind will find a way to justify anything.
Mm.
So if it wasn't the phone, I'd find some other way. I'm like, or we could spend time doing this.
Yeah.
Like, my mind is so good at like, oh, but you ever see those joke memes? You get a writer, and before the writer can write, they're like, oh, I've got to get my playlist, and I've got to get such and such, and I've got to do my research, and then like 6 hours later, you haven't written a thing.
Yeah.
But you're like, but I'm a writer on it. So, I feel like I'm a bhakti yogi, I'm a spiritualist, and I'm like, well, I need the right playlist for my japa meditation. And I need the right so and so, and I need the right atmosphere, and I need the right, and I've spent all that time getting together all the right stuff that it's like hours later and I could have just chanted. I could have just
100%.
chanted.
100%. Okay. Great.
So, charging
Great.
ahead, text 2. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. Can we emphasize that last line, joyfully performed? How many of us are miserable in our spiritual lives? And
Amen.
either we don't talk about it or we feel like we can't talk about it. Joyfully performed.
Right. Very indicative of how the process should feel, it seems.
Yeah. We
Which
should be
perhaps
joyful.
is an opportunity for us to look at ourselves when we're, how is it for us? It seems
Yeah.
like excruciatingly painful for me. Maybe we're not doing it right.
And so, it's like Srila Prabhupada speaks about the execution of devotional service, how we can have practical experience, what it should look like when people are chanting. Like he said, like several paragraphs down, um, in course of chanting without offenses, someone should feel some transcendental pleasure
Mm.
and should very quickly become purified of all material contamination. Now, does that mean that you're going to be a rich bankroller and all this stuff? No, but you're going to feel purified inside. We should feel some transcendental pleasure. And if we're not, like you said, sometimes it's a red flag. It's a stopping point for us to check in with ourselves. Well, then, am I really giving myself over to this process? Am I really chanting with my heart? Am I still up here about it? Am I chanting and scrolling? Am I chanting and spacing out? Like, there's some key markers like, Well, then I'm not feeling this transcendental pleasure.
Mm.
Well, did you ever feel it? Did you feel it at the beginning? Like when we were first falling in love with Krishna and this whole process? And a lot of people say, yes, I felt it then. It's like, okay, well, that's always available. But sometimes we got to go back to the basics. Sometimes we have to go back to clearing out all the other stuff, setting it aside, even for 7 minutes at a time. Sometimes it's not about tackling all 16 rounds in one go with just, I need to just get this over with and done because I promised somebody I would.
Yeah.
It's not about, getting it over with. This is about spending time with our person. And if we looked at the people we had relationships and I was like, all right, Madhva, we want to have this conversation. Let's go get it over with. You'd be like, wow, I don't think this is a podcast for you, Acyuta.
Would be harsh, would be painful.
Yeah, I think you're like, do you really want to do this podcast? Like, if I can get another guest, like we can adjust. You don't have to do this. And if that's the way we're approaching our japa meditation or our spiritual practice, then it's important that we figure out why. Is it because of the association that we're keeping? Because sometimes people can make us feel jaded. They can make us feel really downtrodden. We can hear so much about rules and regulations and what we're doing wrong that
Mm.
that's all we can think of. That's all we focus on. And I think it's so important that not only Srila Prabhupada, but a lot of our spiritual teachers talk about association with like-minded souls.
Mm.
We give respect to everybody, but we don't let everybody into the deepest recesses of our inner being. Just like Krishna. He's in every heart, but he's not giving everybody this most confidential knowledge. He's testing the waters. He's trying to see, okay, who's really here for me? Who's really trying to find out? So, congratulations if you've made it this far into the Gita.
Yeah, absolutely. This verse, the more I look at it, it seems full of little gems, seems full of little talking points. Even just okay, I actually I'm going to go back to the beginning, even though I was looking further in. But the knowledge is the king of education. But the one that I saw was the most secret of all secrets, which is interesting to me because it highlights what's the word I'm looking for? This really is, it's a rare thing. It's a rare thing to try and pursue, and it's a rare thing to achieve. The most secret of all secrets is this highest, most intimate relationship with the divine. And I understand as we go through here, we'll see how Krishna explains that different people worship in different ways. They have different relationships to their understanding of God or the universe or higher power. And those different relationships take you to different places, which is great because it ties into the overarching theme of bhakti, which is inclusive in many ways. It's not saying we're right, you're wrong. But what it is saying is that if there are differences, those differences result in different outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Not that your outcome is wrong. It's not going to happen. You're going to hell for thinking that that outcome is real. It's just a different outcome. And this is the most intimate and the most secret of all the
Yeah.
outcomes that someone could be aspiring for.
What I love about that line, like you said, the most secret of all secrets. It's like, and it's so amazing that all of this is kind of like, I was just thinking about it and I was like, that there's no such thing as coincidence. So look at all these synchronicities. You've got Holy Week right now in America because Easter is coming up and all of these things, right? We had Palm Sunday last Sunday. Easter Sunday is coming up. We've got Good Friday, which was not a Good Friday. They need to change that term. But, you've got the example of Jesus. It's like all of the most intimate and internal things that Jesus found out about the Lord, about his relationship with God as the Son of God, right? All of these intimate things that made Jesus say, wait, guys, I've seen some things. Let me help you out because there are some amazing things about the supreme person or supremacy, right? All of those amazing things. And then we've got, because right now it's also Ramadan, which
Mm.
marks when like the Prophet Muhammad was getting all of his realization. So I was like, it's so interesting that both of these times are happening simultaneously, marking these great spiritual resurgences. And
Mm,
here Krishna's like, all those things, I'm about to tell them to you all. Most secret of
mm,
all secrets. And he's like, and essentially, really, Krishna's, I'm gonna let you into my heart right now. And he says, he's like, I know everyone, but me, no one knows. And so now he's really opening himself up and saying, I'm going to tell you everything. And it'll make this whole process easier because you'll see, you stick with me, it's joyful. I'm going to make it happen. Don't worry. Which you'd think, I mean, Arjuna would have already known this. But sometimes he's looking at Krishna and all he sees is his cousin, his friend, the person he grew up with, like his brother. He sees the person that he's had sleepovers with and sat on the same bed with and cried in front of, and he's playfully fought with him and pushed him, and they have play fights and they kick each other, they wrestle each other. And so he's just looking at Krishna, he's like, but he's just my friend. I and sometimes we can be like, but also, did you see what he did with your kingdom? So long story short, the Pandava brothers, and Arjuna is one of five, they got a kingdom that was barren desert land filled with snakes. And Krishna makes it the most opulent, lush, foliage filled place on the world, in the entire world, filled with a palace of illusions. It was like a fun palace. It was like a fun world. Like you have like an amusement park palace. You've got all this really cool stuff. You've got talking shrubbery and trees. You've got like lakes that look like the ground and ground that look like lakes. And you've got curtains made of fire. You've got all this amazingly cool stuff. But that was because of Krishna. And so Krishna is saying, he's like, don't worry, you stick with me. Not only will I make it possible, I'll make it happen. And you won't even be the slightest bit upset. When Krishna makes miracles in our lives, nobody, we've always said it, nobody does it like Krishna. You have a fear, you have enemies, you want to you pray to Krishna. And when he makes your success happen, he makes it happen in the biggest way possible. And usually you don't even have to say anything about it because Krishna is such that he does things in a way where your enemies will hate it. They will hate it so much. But the way he lifts everybody up, his people, the way he lifts them up and changes their lives, it's one of my most favorite things. And so he's like, this is the perfection of religion. Knowing Krishna, knowing our relationship with him, that's the perfection of religion. Those are the things that are everlasting.
I really like that sentence, the perfection of religion, because religion has a bad rep in today's day and age. And even in the Gita, in the last, one of the last verses, Krishna says, abandon all varieties of religion, right? Just surrender unto me. But to me, this is an indicator that it's not that you just, religion is something to be thrown out, forget religion, but that when it's done properly, this is the goal. This is the perfection. There's a reason why religion exists. And sure, as humans, we can mess it up. But the reason is still there, and there are positives when it's approached in a healthy way. And when it is approached in a healthy way with the right intention, this can be the result when it's combined with Krishna.
And I it's so interesting that right now, before Krishna has really gotten into the topic, it's almost like he's making a plug for devotional service.
Right.
Isn't that crazy? Krishna's like, I'm about to tell you the best thing ever and how to love me. And then he's like, and it'll be really good. You should take up this process because king of all knowledge, essence of religion, it's perfect. It's this, it's that. Why should Krishna have to beg us to take up the process of loving him? Like, this is absurd when we think about it. And this is, it's like one of those things, the more you read it and the more you sit with it, the more vast Bhagavad Gita becomes. And really, I keep looking at it because You see all these memes all the time. You should never have to beg anyone to love you. You are manifesting someone who will love you exactly as you deserve. All of these things. But now,
Yeah.
even Krishna. Krishna comes to every single one of us countless times. Are you ready yet? Can,
Yeah.
can you accept it yet? Are you ready for me yet? Are you here? And we're constantly like, maybe in a bit. It's like, okay, I'll come back. The Supreme Person kind of just waits with bated breath.
Mm.
Who, I mean, who's gonna love God like God deserves? Like,
This is so beautiful when you connect with it. When you feel that presence in your life, it's almost overwhelming. The challenge is staying connected. The challenge is remembering that. The challenge is being conscious of that in your life. Because for me, it can become a thing where, cool, cool, night. That's cool to hear. So, what are we doing for lunch? What's happening today? And I feel bad saying it. I'm just sharing the truth of my own experience. I feel bad saying it because what's interesting is despite my disconnection, I it forces me to ask the question. It forces me, why am I here? Why do I do this? And whenever I come back to that question, at least even with my logic, which is interesting because a lot of people say people believe in God because they are sentimentalists, not for logical reasons. But for me, sometimes my sentimentalism is challenged. My faith is challenged. And what brings me back is my logic, is that this is the thing that I've come across in my life that makes the most sense. It really is. Whenever I break down life's deep questions, the answers all seem to be here. I think, okay, well, that gives me faith again. Then I think about the moments in my life where I've really, really suffered and how I turned to Krishna and how those moments in my life transformed and became the best experiences I've had, the most connected experiences I have. I lean on those experiences. I say, I've definitely felt this work. And to me, it ties into that last sentence. It's joyfully performed. I feel that when I am doing the activities that do connect me, that it becomes very much this joyfully performed. And when I'm disconnected, it's normally because I'm not doing those activities. And guess what? I can't say that I go about my life joyfully performing activities, even though I'm doing things that gratify my senses. I can't say, honestly, I can't say I'm joyfully performing. I say I'm following my mind's beck and call, and there's some sense gratification involved in that. It's not joyful though. If anything, I do that long enough, it becomes the opposite. It can lead to depression.
and isn't that something, to look at? And it says, and ask yourself, what actually am I doing in my life that brings me joy? And a lot of people, it's like, is it my job? And for so many people, it's like, no, I'm not happy about my job. My job does not give me joy. It's stress. It's this, it's that. It's meeting after meeting. It's people I don't want to deal with. It's high pressure. It's all that I have to pretend to be somebody else. I have to figure out, how to play the game. But that happens to be the thing that we will devote most of our time to because we think it gives us results that are joyful. Like we think we like money, um and really it's so important for us to actually look underneath and find out, okay, why am I doing this and what is it that I'm actually needing? Is it security? Is it the status that I think this money will give me? Is it all, because we can think, oh, but I want all this money. Yeah, but why? You don't want it for it to just sit in the bank. You want security, you might want status, you want a bigger house, you want to engage more with family members, you want to do all these things, like, or I've seen people who have been in prestigious jobs, they've held jobs, and those jobs don't actually make them happy, but they stay there and they never retire because they don't have anything else. And so for spiritualists, retirement is You go on yatras and you're exploring the self, you're going on these inner journeys and doing these things. And for people who lack that, their job is their source of social interaction. It almost becomes like religion.
Yeah, fully.
So it's looking at devotion. What are we devoting ourselves to? What are we giving our attention to and our time to? That lets you know where we've devoted ourselves.
It's funny that ties in with this second, slightly different, but very related to this second paragraph of the purport. I'll just read quickly. Generally, people are not educated in this confidential knowledge. They are educated in external knowledge. As far as ordinary education is concerned, people are involved with so many departments: politics, sociology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, etc. There are so many departments of knowledge all over the world and many huge universities, but there is unfortunately no university or educational institution where the science of the spirit soul is instructed. Yet, the soul is the most important part of the body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. Still, people are placing great stress on the bodily necessities of life, not caring for the vital soul. Actually, that precisely described what we were just talking about.
Yeah, it's so good and it's so perfect. And I feel like this is why we need purports. Um, I can tell you right now, I'm having these realizations only after having read Bhagavad Gita several times. So these realizations are often very much shaped by Srila Prabhupada's purports and his realizations, which
Mm,
he would call his devotional ecstasies.
mm,
He's like, you want to see ecstatic, transcendental symptoms here. He's written them down in these purports. So I've very much been shaped by them. And we can think, oh, well, then you're just a sheep, you're just mindlessly following. And I'm like, well, no, I've put it to test. I've had some experiences in life where we have to think about it and come to the conclusion that there's got to be something more than fighting for this body.
mm,
Because for some sections of people have been oppressed. The fight never ever ends. And when you're tired of fighting,
mm.
what do you do if there's nothing but the body? You can never give up that fight. You can never progress past it. And it is so depressing.
For the majority of people, life is simply not fair. If
Right?
you have only a material perspective, if you
And there's
only
no
have a
way to
material
make it
perspective,
fair. It's looking like it's only getting worse.
yeah,
Every person who comes into power seems like they're just worse than the one before them.
right.
Every time you try to make a policy, it seems like it's just worse than the one before it. And if we don't have any knowledge of, wait a second, hold on a minute, all these policies are happening, but there's something else happening inside here. This can't be all there is. And Krishna's saying, you're right. This is not all there is. There's a whole inner world of the soul. We are connected. And this body that we are fighting for so hard, at some point, we're still going to have to give it up. Doesn't mean we shouldn't fight for it, but it does mean we need to balance out our priorities.
Mm. This is a long purport, huh?
Yeah, it is. Totally is. And there were some really really nice jewels in it. And he speaks about that, being joyful. And he goes into a little bit about association, but I feel like that next verse really hits. So if we could, I want to dive
Let's
into
do
that.
it. Let's do it.
Okay.
Oh,
Those
Krishna, I see what you're saying. First sentence. God
yeah, he's gonna dig his thing right in there.
dang.
Those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore, they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. This is not so long of a purport, and so I feel like it's so important to read the whole thing if we can.
Do it. Let's do it.
The faithless cannot accomplish this process of devotional service. That is the purport of this verse. Faith is created by association with devotees. Unfortunate people.
Oof, wait,
Right. See,
wait,
I told you. I told you he's
wait.
gonna give you all your answers.
Oh my gosh, you don't understand. You don't understand. For the last month, maybe 2 months, this has been my prayer. Despite feeling a faith, crisis of faith, when I am praying, when I am chanting, because I chant, I'm either going to do some japa because I do it naturally. It's not as consistent as it should be. I also do kirtan. You know, we love kirtan. So when I'm doing these activities, I'm feeling there's a lack of faith. There's a lack of faith. So I'm thinking, let me pray, Krishna. I know. Please help me. This is the area where right now I see I need help. My faith needs help, and I've been asking this question. I need help with my faith. Please, please, please. Boom. Faith is created by association with devotees.
It's our friend Krishna coming in with the clutch. He's like, here you go. I got you. You've been praying. Here's your
We
answer.
see Krishna speaks through his devotees, right? It's no what's the word? It's no coincidence that it was, or it's no coincidence that it was you reading this to me right now, Acyuta. So thank you very much. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but please
No,
do
and
carry on.
this is why I love this one. I have read
Yeah,
and read this verse so many times because it was this one of those moments I was like, whoa. So unfortunate people, even after hearing all the evidence of Vedic literature from great personalities, still have no faith in God. They are hesitant and cannot stay fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Thus, faith is a most important factor for progress in Krishna consciousness. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that faith is the complete conviction that simply by serving the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, one can achieve all perfection. That is called real faith. That that conviction right there, I'm like, are there very many things that I have real absolute conviction in? I'm like, no.
mm,
And I really feel like this process of Krishna consciousness should be the thing that I have the most conviction in. That
right.
simply by serving our supreme friend, one can achieve all perfection. And it's like that. It's like, well, why haven't I gotten it yet? It's like, because it's not over yet, right? It's not the end yet. Don't lose hope in the middle and throw
Right.
the whole thing out. It's like, well, when's it gonna happen? Why hasn't it happened yet? It's like, it's not the end. We got some clearing out to do. We got some stuff.
I hear you. I hear you. And this is what was so powerful about Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. This is how he came in the 60s and he created an entire movement. He turned the hippies into happies because his faith was unprecedented. It was completely, there was full conviction because he was experiencing something.
Okay, because can we say 39 days on a steamship, on a cargo ship? You ever like I've said this to myself. I'm like, I've never spent a month traveling anywhere.
Mm,
Nor do I want to? Like at certain point by the month's end, you've already gotten to where you're gonna go, and you've been there for some time. I was on a flight to South Africa, and the flight was 19 and a half hours, and I was done. I was just like, I never want to be on a flight ever again. Like, why? Why is this happening?
mm. It's true.
So,
The lady who he was petitioning, I forget her name, Butterji,
Mrs. Srimati Murarji, isn't it?
Srimati Murarji. She was vehemently trying to convince Prabhupada not to go. She was fearful he might lose his life on that
She
journey.
told him, she's like, it's too cold. You'll die.
Yeah,
And if you've never experienced India cold versus America, New York cold, it is so cold. We get as cold as Russia sometimes. It is so cold.
Krishna. Krishna. Actually, I have to say, is one good thing about England, despite having long, crappy winters, it doesn't generally get that cold.
Yeah, all of my friends that have come here from England, we are extreme. We're more extreme with the hot. We're more extreme with the cold. They're like,
Yeah.
this is England doesn't do this. I was like, yeah, well,
Yeah, well, England don't know how it's done,
No,
right?
New York is so we can get hot and sweaty miserably into the over 100s in the
Oof,
Fahrenheit. Yeah, with humidity.
oof.
And so with the humidity, it gets really oppressive. And then with the cold, we've gotten it's been so low. It's so low. For us to get minus temperatures in New York on a Fahrenheit scale, like habitually our
On a
lows,
Fahrenheit scale.
right? Because in Celsius, like I look at it and it's always like we're at -6, like constantly. Like
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
always at
yeah.
like a negative. Like I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's fine. Like,
Wow. You know what's funny though? I'm not a fan of the cold, but I like cold swimming.
huh? Really?
-6 or it's going to be frozen. Generally, here in England, we get to in the winters. There's an outdoor pool. Sorry, I digress. But there's an outdoor pool in London that is unheated. And in the winter, I have a few friends that go pretty consistently. I tend not to go that consistently, but when I can, I try to go with them, and it's anywhere between 4 and 7 degrees, which is cold.
It's really cold.
It is cold. Even 7 degrees, it is cold, painfully cold. But if you can get through that pain, if you're in that first minute is literally excruciatingly painful, but once you get through that, it's blissful.
Are you also like a fond of cold showers type of person?
I am fond of cold showers.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh. Sometimes we downplay the mystical things that follow us around from life to life,
Yeah.
which, this is how we tie it back into Bhagavad Gita. It's because we're souls and we have all of these impressions. We've been in so many different bodies for so long that it just, and so, I think that as spiritual kids growing up in a Krishna community, we downplay a lot of that. Like that, I feel is like that right there. That's a mystical ability. People train themselves with that kind of tapasya for a long time, and
Right.
Mudva's like, no, I'm kind of fond of it. This is nice.
Don't get me wrong. I love me a hot, steamy shower too.
Yeah,
Sometimes
but
I'll indulge.
when we look at the things that naturally we can withstand,
Right.
like I'm a person, I love food, I love eating, but I will consistently forget to eat.
Wow.
Consistently.
Do you find
There-
fasting somewhat easier than others, would you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah, I don't mind fasting. I like fasting is a thing for me. Like I'm like, okay, cool. It's fasting day. Let's do it. Like,
Wow. I am terrible at fasting. The first twinge of hunger, start panicking. I need to eat something. I'm hungry. I have to eat. I'm gonna pass away. I'm gonna disappear. I'm so hungry. Look at
yeah,
me.
see? So, like all of these different little things of tapasya that people train themselves for and all this stuff, sometimes because the nature of the soul is what it is, we
Mm,
have these impressions that we carry with us,
mm.
and it's not for some people it's just not a big deal. That kind of tapasya is fine. Like people are built for certain things. It's so interesting to look at the nature of living entities.
I'm thinking I may have been a homeless Indian mendicant bathing in rivers somewhere. Sounds cool.
Right, like, what's your mystic property? Like what's your
Yeah.
mystic
I can bathe in cold rivers.
okay. And I think sometimes we should play that up more. Those are the things where Srila Prabhupada says this is conducive for spiritual life. If you're the kind of person that can get up and take a shower and all whatever, cold showers and all this stuff, we should celebrate the things that we've got on our side more often. Usually we're so focused on, well, I don't have that and I can't do that. But what can you do? These are some great things.
Okay, so you were
Right.
reading. We had got through to the first paragraph of the purport.
So then we have a wonderful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. By giving water to the root of a tree, one satisfies its branches, twigs, and leaves, and by supplying food to the stomach, one satisfies all the senses of the body. Similarly, by engaging in the transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, one automatically satisfies all the demigods and all other living entities. Therefore, after reading Bhagavad Gita, one should promptly come to the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. One should give up all other engagements and adopt the service of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. If one is convinced of this philosophy of life, that is faith. It can kind of sound culty, you know, it can kind of sound like Srila Prabhupada's like, give up your day job, go ahead. But even after hearing from his own spiritual teacher, his own guru, Srila Prabhupada didn't give up his job. He continued to serve, but he looked at his service to his family. He looked at his service to his community. He looked at his service in so many different ways, thinking, well, you know, let me try and continue to serve. And so Srila Prabhupada would even talk about how he would break up his japa chanting throughout the day when he was working and taking care of family, etc. And he would do 4 first thing in the morning, then 4 before lunch. He would do 4 when he came home from work, and then 4 just before dinner. And then after dinner, he'd be like, by the time dinner happened, he'd be done. But he would kind of plan it out in a way and not fanatically, I've got to do all this right now, get it over with. No, he was be practical. And so it might sound like, just give up everything right now, give us, you know, your job and your money and your house and your car, and just go be a monk devotee. But even Krishna is not telling Arjuna to give up his day job. Arjuna is thinking, I could give up this whole thing and go into the forest. And Krishna's like, whoa, 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 that's not what this is about. And in Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada makes a very important point about what is renunciation and what is kind of meditation or samadhi for us. So samadhi is this internal state where it's like all external activities stop. You're simply focused on transcendence in the soul. And what he says that looks like for us as bhakti yogis is Krishna's mother. He said she is the example of samadhi for us. Samadhi for a bhakti yogi means always busy.
Wow.
It's like the complete opposite.
Complete opposite of what we perceive it to be.
And so she was constantly on the move. She had a little baby. She had little Krishna, who was very boisterous, very active, always doing something, getting into something, going somewhere. She was constantly busy, but her mind always had this singular focus. What will Krishna eat? What will Krishna wear? What if Krishna gets hurt? What if he gets stuck by a thorn? How did Krishna look today? Oh, my Krishna is sleeping. Oh, now Krishna's awake. Oh, now this is... But she was always on the move, always busy, doing something. She had a house full of attendants that she was commanding. The house of Yashoda, even though it was in a farm village, was a palace with pillars extensively. So she was commanding an entire palace of attendants and people that were helping this department, that department, making sure he was okay, making sure everything was running smoothly. This is giving up all other engagements and adopting the service of the Supreme Lord. No matter what we're doing, how does it connect back to Krishna?
I love it. I love it. And again, this ties into association. Look, see, when reading spiritual texts, sometimes you need guidance. In fact, typically we need guidance in how to understand these things. And to me, this is a perfect example of that. And for some people, maybe it does look like that. Maybe for certain people in their situation, giving up their job and becoming a monk is the right thing to do. It's not that that's not the right thing to do for anyone. But in many cases, maintaining your job, especially if you already have a family, then it's not going to be the right thing for you to do. Then you got to look at and understand, how do I read this spiritual truth? And then how do I understand how to apply that in my life? And that takes intelligence, and often it takes guidance. But you explained it so beautifully.
And what you were just saying kind of still ties into this last really long paragraph, but it's a good paragraph. So the last paragraph begins, now the development of that faith is the process of Krishna consciousness. There are 3 divisions of Krishna conscious men and or women. You know, sometimes you might think, why why is it always like, oh, these classes of men? Or when you hear verses, you're like, oh, he will understand the science of his soul. This is why is it always male centered? And I was teaching myself Hindi, and they don't have a different word. It's the same word to describe both the pronoun of male or female. It's not a different word. You have to kind of pay attention to the rest of the sentence and then see how the verb is used to find out who's doing it. They do not, it's not a separate, the pronoun is not separate.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so, and also, you know, if you've ever heard Indian people speak, you wonder, it's like, do you, your articles are weird. Like the thes are in weird places and then missing. It's because they don't use articles. Hindi doesn't have articles at all. they have it to show like a number of things. Like if you say just one apple, sure. But the apple, there's no the, there's no article. So yeah, whenever I read these purports, I feel like it's so important for us to realize the context, not only of Bhagavad Gita, but of the person. So sometimes we can feel a little bit estranged from spiritual talk. It's like, it's all concerned with the patriarchy. And I'm like, or there's some language things that are going on here. Like, or, so there are 3 divisions of Krishna conscious people. In the 3rd class are those who have no faith. Even if they are officially engaged in devotional service, they cannot achieve the highest perfectional stage. Most probably they will slip after some time. They may become engaged, but because they haven't complete conviction and faith, it is very difficult for them to continue in Krishna consciousness. And so you're saying, what you've been saying to me is, you're like, well, there are 3 divisions and you might reach one section, but then you find yourself kind of always sliding between this spectrum of faith. And so you're finding this point. It's like, well, when I'm at a higher platform, it's so much easier for me to maintain my spiritual life. And then when I'm having those crises of faith, you're like, I'm engaged, but I can't find the consistency. So this is what Srila Prabhupada is breaking down now for us practically, especially for you.
Yeah, this is it. Speaking right to me. I'm feeling it.
We have practical experience in discharging our missionary activity that some people come and apply themselves to Krishna consciousness with some hidden motive. And as soon as they are economically a little well situated, they give up this process and take to their old ways again. It is only by faith that one can advance in Krishna consciousness. As far as the development of faith is concerned, one who is well versed in the literatures of devotional service and has attained the stage of firm faith is called a first-class person in Krishna consciousness. And in the 2nd class are those who are not very advanced in understanding the devotional scriptures, but who automatically have firm faith that Krishna Bhakti, or service to Krishna, is the best course, and so in good faith have taken it up. They are superior to the 3rd class, who have neither perfect knowledge of the scriptures nor good faith, but by association and simplicity are trying to follow. So here we get this idea of the 2nd class person, who you were saying, you were like, well, you know, I've heard it, and it might be, sometimes I might ask myself, why am I here? Why am I doing this? But what I do know is there's something here. There's something to this Krishna consciousness. So I'm sticking with it. And Srila Prabhupada he's like actively and perfectly describing every situation. And I just see how it's so amazingly psychological. It's like this scientific breakdown of the psychology of faith, which we think is so not scientific. So then we have, the 3rd class person in Krishna consciousness may fall down. But when one is in the 2nd class, he does not fall down. And for the 1st class person in Krishna consciousness, there is no chance of falling down. One in the 1st class will surely make progress and achieve the result at the end. As far as the 3rd class person in Krishna consciousness is concerned, although he has faith in the conviction that devotional service to Krishna is very good, he has not yet gained adequate knowledge of Krishna, through the scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes these third-class persons in Krishna consciousness have some tendency toward karma yoga and jnana yoga, and sometimes they are disturbed. But as soon as the infection of karma yoga or jnana yoga is vanquished, they become second-class or first-class persons in Krishna consciousness, which I kind of love. And I feel like Srila Prabhupada doesn't leave it hopeless. And even for the second class person, he's like, but don't worry. He's like, there's no chance. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. You'll be okay. And I feel like you should definitely take this as heartwarming encouragement from Srila Prabhupada. Really, literally being like, Madhva, you're gonna be okay. You'll be fine. Don't worry so much about falling off the track. You'll be okay. Krishna's gonna yank you back either way, but he's like, you'll be fine.
I sometimes have to remind myself there's a beautiful explanation that if one goes in front of the deity of Lord Ram and just one time expresses with sincerity, I am yours, please accept me, that Lord Ram will never forget that person. And Lord Ram is an expansion of Lord Krishna. And here at the Bhaktivedanta Mana at our temple here in Watford, we have both Radha, Gokulananda, Radha and Krishna. And we also have Sita, Ram, Lakshman, and Hanuman. So not only once, but many times I have gone and declared. So I have to have faith and pray that. And I just hear beautiful stories as well about even Srila Prabhupada taking care of his devotees, even those who struggled in their lives. Not that this is an excuse to not take action and try to uplift myself, but it does definitely inspire me. It does definitely give me faith that I am not forgotten.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful.
And you know, our spiritual life, even if we feel some lacking or some guilt in not upholding the topmost process of our spiritual lives, we still need to know that God is going to embrace us and hold space for that, knows that we're going to have these peaks and valleys, and still is saying, but don't worry, I'm here with you along for the ride, the entire ride. Funny enough, just earlier this week, I was listening to a lecture that my guru gave on Madhvacharya. How much do you know about Madhvacharya?
Not as much as I should.
Oh my gosh. So I'll send you the link after. Just because
Please.
it's, you know, and he's really accessible, you know, with all of these great spiritual predecessors and teachers. And it made me think of you because people will often think that your name is Madhava,
Right.
but that's different. And it's Madhva. And Madhvacharya was such a cool dude.
It's my full name is Madhvacharya, in fairness.
See, like, you know, he was such a cool dude. Expansion of Bhima, just like the coolest spiritualist ever. And he had such firm faith. And he had such a hunger for spirituality. So I'll send you the lecture just because I feel like it would be such cool association. And it's on YouTube. So
Yeah, send it to me. I'll check it out. I'll check
you
it
get
out
to,
100%.
you know, repurpose your YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's it. I still feel like, yeah, I'm in my safe zone watching something.
That's right.
Yeah.
So at the very end, and we can end with this, first class, second class, and third class attachment are also explained in Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto. Those who have no faith, even after hearing about Krishna and the excellence of devotional service, who think that it is simply eulogy, find the path very difficult, even if they are supposedly engaged in devotional service. For them, there is very little hope of gaining perfection. Thus, faith is very important in the discharge of devotional service.
Come back to this sentence. Come back to this sentence. Faith is created by association with devotees. Because that's what I'm left feeling at the end of this purport. You think, okay, great, faith, it's everything. But if it's lacking, where does it come from? Therefore, I come back to this sentence, created by association with devotees.
And you've got it. You've got it. And I think it was so important because I guarantee you, probably 75% of us feel the exact same way you do. We all feel the same way. And sometimes we just don't verbalize it. We're just not actually being real and
Mm.
speaking about it. We're going through the motions and faking it till we make it, and never really actually going inside and saying, okay, now I've been faking it till I make it, but how am I feeling? I am not feeling so secure. In fact, I'm feeling a little insecure. And I think Srila Prabhupada goes into that as well. So we'll get there in the next section. But he goes into that, and he goes into it about how the more impersonal we are with our spiritual lives, the more insecure we feel about our advancement.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Srila Prabhupada, he dropping bombs, okay?
Can you say that again?
The more impersonal we are with our spiritual advancement, the more insecure we are about it.
Wow, that hits. Thank you for that, by the way. I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you saying that, because I agree. I feel as though I'm not the only one feeling this, and it's something which is important to talk about, which is why I even share it here, because it's very likely common for most people who are attempting to go deeper in their spiritual life, is that there will be times where it's a challenge and we're not doing what we think we should, and we question ourselves, and we question things, and our faith is tested. And I hope for me and I hope for myself that these are opportunities for me to go deeper and for me to come out stronger. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And of course, I feel like that if we approach these opportunities in that way, and we're sincerely trying, which that for sure to at least some degree is there. And I do feel like Krishna reciprocates. Even this podcast today is that. Look what we've been speaking about this whole time, more or less, and then really, it's just bosh. There it is. Faith is created by association with devotees, and that's exactly what I've been praying for this. Well, to give me faith, but how? Where is that faith? How is that faith going to come? And couldn't be said more simply. Couldn't be given to me more simply on a plate. But now the ball is in my court, right?
I mean, and we might think, oh, there's no association. It's always with us, always around us. Like you said, everywhere, these phones are association, these apps are association. You and I just had an hour and a half of association.
Yeah.
And I always feel uplifted after it.
Yes, me too. My parents, they promote Gita discussions. What does that mean? It means that they promote the not just passive listening, but active listening through discussing. And well, that's exactly what we're doing, which is very cool, but that's not why I was saying it. One of their facets of this active Gita discussion is taking what you've learned and doing the ideal application, starting there, and then moving deeper than that and doing personal application. So what have I just learned, and how can I, in the idea, what would this new realization look like in my life if I applied it to the ideal standard? Okay, great. I have a ballpark. I have a bar that I can work toward, but let me break it down to what's real in my life.
Your parents are so cool. There are some times when my appreciation for the first generation of devotees really like descends on me like a rock, and this was one of those moments, because what they did was they took really heady terms like Vaidhi Bhakti
Yeah.
and then like Sadhana Bhakti or Raganuga Bhakti, and they brought it into these applicable, you've got ideal application, then you've got personal application. And that's exactly what it is. And it can rub us the wrong way as like second generationers or Krishna kids, like all these ritualistic rules activity. Like, I don't want that. But your parents like, part of this active listening, let's try it. Okay. Let's do it to the ideal standard and see what that looks like. Then transpose it into our lives and then see what that looks like over here. And that's exactly the process of Krishna consciousness that the Goswamis at the topmost level are trying to get everybody to like really understand and move towards. So yeah, it was just one of those moments where it's like, I really loved some of the work that the first generation is like, they're so priceless. So I really, please take care of your parents and tell them to take care of each other and themselves, mental health, emotional health, all of the things, because they're jewels and we need them. And I owe a lot of my Krishna consciousness to your parents through
Thank you,
these
Acyuta.
writings and these study guides of Srimad Bhagavatam that have helped me immensely. So they're treasures. Okay, protect our treasures.
I hear you. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, Acyuta. They appreciate it too. I've already shared many wonderful comments that you've made with them, and they are super grateful. But thank you again. You're a legend, Acyuta. You are a freaking legend. I figured perhaps we can wrap up with trying to do that. Maybe we can do a little bit of that discussion technique. We can say, okay, what's the ideal application, knowing this new information that we've absorbed, and perhaps what can we do in our practically in our actual life? What can we take away from this?
Sure, yeah. I mean, and I feel like one and maybe not like a whole list of things, because that's when my mind goes, why did you
That's
give
what I'm saying. Then this one, you're going to be real with yourself. You're going to say, okay,
yeah,
realistically,
you have to really
practically in
understand,
my
like,
life.
right, you're like, and I see what the standard is here, and now what can I actually do? Because if I give myself a list of 10 things to do, I
Ain't
guarantee you
gonna happen.
I'm not doing it. I'm taking a nap.
100%. That's exactly what I'm going to do.
I'm gonna go take a nap. I'm not doing any of that. So I feel like, just one thing is asking ourselves, what did I associate with today?
Exactly.
Who did I associate with today? Sachinandan Maharaj gives the most beautiful, like 5-minute fun tip. He was saying how important association was, and he gives these really nice little, they're like above the clouds, they're called on SoundCloud. They're like the shortest sweet meditations in his like sweet German accent, which sweet German accent don't normally go together. For him, it works.
So true.
Yeah, sweet German accent is not something you hear, but for him, it is the embodiment of all of who he is. And he was saying that our association should be special. We should call one another. He said, you have to make sure you call your Krishna conscious friends and your people, like the people that you really. And he says, and you should speak something with them that you can't talk about with anyone else. It's like, this is how we make our association strong, by speaking those things that we can't speak about with anybody else. So when you say, when you hear, you're like, oh, but devotees, they just get me. We should be putting that into practical application. And so that's one thing that we can try. And if, when we're looking at it, it's like, what have I associated with today? If the answer is no one, nothing, then reach out to a Krishna conscious friend. Speak something that only they will get about you, all the things that only you two will get. And I guarantee you, well, I can guarantee it on Sachinandan Maharaj's order, it'll start to make a difference in our entire spiritual lives.
I love that. I love that, because you're literally opening my eyes to something that I'm actually starting to feel, oh, I can actually do that. Because this is always my concern. When you're struggling with something, you say, okay, I'm going to do this new thing. And then you commit to something you actually don't, it's actually going to be a real challenge for you to do, even if it sounds simple. Sometimes it's hard to know, wait, how can I dovetail an activity? What is it that I can change that's actually going to help me bring this thing into my life practically? But what you just said was triggering me and realizing that actually, no, this is something I can do. And I remember at certain points in my life, I've taken this principle, I've really ran with this principle of trying to dovetail my conversations, especially with those who I knew were down for it, into Krishna conscious conversations. And I'm just thinking of, I go to the gym with a good friend of mine, and I know he'd be down for this. And that's something that I'm going to do anyway, because we want to go together. That's something that I make the time to do, so I can dovetail the conversations that we have in that time very easily. If anything, he would be encouraging me to do the same. So that's at least one thing that I can do coming away from this, is to consciously direct those conversations to Krishna. And if I can do more, I will. But that's one practical, real thing that I can take away from this conversation in my own life.
And I'm kind of eager to see how it really opens up and evolves, like, your ideas of faith and how you feel coming back in 2 weeks. I'm like, oh, I want to see what it what it felt
Right.
like.
Okay, me too. Let's do it. 2 weeks
Let's
from
do
now,
it.
we're going to reassess, reevaluate.
And it's good because it
I'll
holds
be
me
real. I'll be
accountable.
honest as well.
It's going to hold me really accountable. And so, and like, it's like, sure, association, but when you get together, don't just talk about the weather. Don't just talk about whatever,
Yeah.
like you said, redirect it a little bit, even if it's just sharing. You know what I've been really feeling? I've been feeling a little bit like off over here, or, oh man, that last Akadashi was something else, or I didn't feel so bad. Look at that. Like, talk
Right.
about those things that only you'll get.
Yeah.
And it makes everything so much deeper, and it will increase the faith.
On a very separate note, I might need to get computer glasses. I'm starting to go dizzy, Acyuta. I see this computer way too long. I'm seeing double
blue light
almost.
glasses.
You
You
do?
get them. Yeah, blue light glasses are the way.
Yeah, I need to get some because I'm starting to see double in this room. I've been sitting at my desk way too long. Krishna Chaitanya. But anyway, that was beautiful. Thank you so much, Acyuta. I got masses and masses of value from this discussion, as I always do. I'm grateful for your wisdom, for the effort that you put in, for the reading that you do, and the realizations that you bring out of the Gita. Always grateful for that, as I know our listeners are as well. I actually got feedback from a listener for the first time just the other day. Bumped into someone at the temple. I saw them. I actually acknowledged them because I'd never seen them before. Normally at the temple, I pretty much know everyone. I thought, oh, where did they come from? Maybe they're from another temple. Maybe they're visiting from another country. Go on with my life, carry on. And then later in the evening, they approached me and said, hey, by the way, I just wanted to tell you that I listened to your podcast and I love it. It really helps. I was there. I was like, what?
It's so great.
First time, and they were so encouraging. Her name was Carolyn. Carolyn, if you watched this episode, shout out to you. You were awesome. It was so encouraging. And it was really nice. It was really nice to hear that these episodes go somewhere and that people listen to them.
That's gorgeous. And and even for me, I feel like I've gotten a chance to know you more. And I feel like my own friendship with you has deepened so much that just through these conversations and these podcasts, I feel like there's some people that
Me
I'm like
too.
ride or die for. I'm like, Mudva is one of my, like, nah, I'm down.
I
Like,
feel the same way.
whatever Mudva wants, I'm down.
That's something I'm uber grateful for about this podcast as well, is that it's allowed us to go deep in our relationship on such an ideal topic as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all for listening as well. Sending love to all of you. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode. You got to tune in for the next one now, because you've just heard what we're doing. We're going to be checking in 2 weeks and seeing what our commitments about association, how they've helped. Well, for me in particular, how it's going to help my faith.
Okay, that's good. Now we have like
big
science
one.
Experiments. Okay.
Got to be back with us in 2 weeks. Okay. Hope you all have a lovely rest of your day wherever you are, a lovely week. Look forward to seeing you at the next one. Hare Krishna.